Vietnam's jungles didn't just hide enemy fighters. They were home to some of the most dangerous wildlife on Earth. These creatures wounded and even killed American troops throughout the war. These weren't minor inconveniences or background hazards. According to military medical records, wildlife caused real, documented casualties. In some units, during certain periods, more men were lost to animals than to enemy action. If you're a veteran, you already know this reality. For everyone else, listen closely, because this is the side of war that rarely appears in textbooks, documentaries, or films. Let's break down the most dangerous species American troops encountered, starting with the ones most people never hear about. Indochinese tigers still lived deep within Vietnam's jungles during the 1960s and 70s. These were huge predators. Adult males could exceed 400 pounds and reach lengths of 9 feet. Although some accounts were dismissed as rumors, there were multiple verified incidents of tigers attacking U.S. soldiers. Michael Herr's dispatches mentions tiger stories circulating among troops, but these weren't just campfire tales. Military records confirm real attacks occurred. The threat came from the way tigers hunted. They were ambush predators, striking from behind and targeting the throat or neck. A soldier pulling nighttime guard duty or walking at the back of a patrol was exactly the type of victim a tiger would select. The attack would be sudden, silent, and often fatal before anyone realized what was happening. One well-documented Marine Corps incident describes a listening post that was attacked at night. Hearing screams, the Marines rushed forward and found one man dead with catastrophic injuries to the head and neck. Tracks left behind confirmed a large tiger. The unit spent the rest of the night reinforcing their defenses against something that didn't care about rifles or grenades. Fire bases near dense jungle had to consider tigers when planning perimeter security. Guards weren't just watching for Viet Cong infiltrators. They also feared 400-pound predators capable of killing silently and dragging away a grown man. The psychological strain was enormous. Soldiers sometimes heard the deep, sawing roar tigers make. Hearing that sound in the darkness while already worried about enemy sappers created a fear that cut straight into the human instinct for survival. Wild boars were another major danger. These weren't farm animals. They were highly aggressive and could weigh more than 300 pounds, armed with tusks sharp enough to disembowel a man. Soldiers patrolling through thick vegetation sometimes stumbled into boar territory by accident. An enraged boar could charge instantly, with no warning. Their tusks could sever arteries, tear open legs, or slice the abdomen. Medics evacuated multiple boar attack victims during the war, and enough cases were recorded to appear consistently in unit medical logs. Night operations were especially hazardous. Boars are most active after dark. A unit establishing an ambush or listening post could unknowingly set up right in the middle of a boar's pathway. When a boar charged through, soldiers had seconds to decide: fire and expose their position, or stay silent and risk being gored. There were incidents where boars ran into defensive perimeters at night, causing troops to open fire thinking it was a Viet Cong sapper assault. The chaos and noise could reveal the unit's location and bring actual enemy attacks. Robert Mason's Chicken Hawk briefly mentions a helicopter crew witnessing a soldier sprinting across a clearing with a boar chasing him. It almost sounds humorous until you realize the animal could have killed him if it caught up. Rock apes was the name American troops gave to large primates living in Vietnam's mountains and forests. These were likely a mix of rhesus macaques and possibly larger, poorly documented species. They were not harmless. Many were territorial, traveled in groups, and could become violently aggressive. Multiple reports describe troops being pelted with rocks and branches thrown from the canopy. A rock dropped from 50 feet can cause serious head injuries. Even more troubling were incidents of apes entering base camps to raid food stores, tear up equipment, or attack isolated soldiers. Their strength was tremendous. Even mid-sized primates are several times stronger than humans pound for pound. Some accounts from mountainous regions described large, unidentified primates that didn't match known species. The Vietnam Archive at Texas Tech University includes several soldier reports describing ape-like creatures far bigger than anything officially documented. Whether these were misidentifications or something else remains uncertain, but aggressive primate encounters undeniably occurred and created real operational challenges. Vietnam's estuarine crocodiles, often called alligators by American troops, were another deadly threat. These massive reptiles could exceed 20 feet in length and weigh over a ton. Riverine units operating on the Mekong and other waterways constantly feared crocodiles lurking below the surface. These predators attacked by lunging from the water's edge or rising silently from the depths. Anyone filling canteens, standing near the riverbank, or falling overboard was vulnerable. Multiple recorded incidents describe crocodile attacks on U.S. personnel. The Brownwater Navy's operational logs mention several deadly or near-fatal encounters. In one case, a crocodile surged up beside a patrol boat and nearly dragged a crewman into the water before the others shot at it to drive it back. The murky river water made it impossible to spot crocodiles before they attacked, leaving soldiers constantly on edge whenever they operated near rivers or swampy terrain.
Units crossing rivers sometimes fired into the water beforehand, hoping the noise would scare away any crocodiles nearby. Military medical files document several confirmed crocodile attacks, and the injuries were devastating. These reptiles can deliver more than 3,000 pounds of pressure per square inch with their bite. Survivors often lost limbs or bled out from massive trauma before a medevac could reach them. Kraits deserve special attention among Vietnam's snakes because of their hunting habits and the extreme potency of their venom. Both the banded krait and the Malayan krait lived throughout Vietnam, and both were mainly active at night, exactly when American forces conducted ambushes, patrols, and night movements. Their venom is a powerful neurotoxin, among the strongest of any snake species. It causes paralysis that moves gradually from the extremities toward the lungs. Victims stay conscious the whole time, fully aware as they lose the ability to move, then breathe. Without antivenom and artificial respiration, the result is almost always fatal. Krait bites were especially dangerous because they often didn't hurt at first. A soldier could be bitten without realizing it until numbness and weakness appeared hours later, by which point the venom had already spread throughout the body. Numerous Vietnam medical reports describe troops who were bitten during nighttime operations and didn't seek help until symptoms were unmistakable. Kraits frequently slithered into sleeping areas and defensive positions after dark. Several documented cases describe soldiers being bitten while they slept, only to wake up unable to move as paralysis crept through their body. It was a nightmare scenario that happened more than once during the war. Treating krait bites in field conditions was extremely difficult. Antivenom had to be administered quickly, and respiratory support was essential as paralysis progressed. Many forward medical stations simply didn't have the equipment to handle severe envenomations, making rapid evacuation critical. Yet evacuations weren't always possible under fire. Vietnamese giant centipedes could grow more than 12 inches long, and some recorded examples reached 14 inches. These weren't harmless pests, they were venomous, fast, and aggressive. Their venom caused excruciating pain. In multiple medic accounts, soldiers described centipede bites as being as painful as, or even worse than, some combat wounds. The bite area often swelled dramatically, sometimes doubling in size. The centipedes crawled into anything they could fit inside – boots, sleeping bags, uniforms, equipment. Troops learned to shake out every item before using it. Even then, centipedes were stealthy enough to go unnoticed until they bit. Tim O'Brien's The Things They Carried mentions the ritual of checking boots, a habit driven largely by fear of giant centipedes and scorpions. Night operations made encounters almost inevitable. Lying in ambush positions or manning listening posts, soldiers often felt something crawling on them, but couldn't turn on lights to see what it was. When the culprit turned out to be a foot-long centipede and it bit, the intense pain and swelling could jeopardize the entire mission. Evacuations for centipede bites were rare. Units couldn't justify using helicopters for non-lethal injuries. Most soldiers simply had to endure the agony and continue their mission. When bites became infected, evacuation sometimes happened days later, once the infection turned dangerous. Vietnam's jungles were also home to several species of large, venomous spiders. While most weren't lethal to healthy adults, their bites caused significant pain, swelling, and sometimes serious complications. The psychological toll was often worse than the medical one. Troops moving through thick foliage frequently emerged with spiders crawling all over them, sometimes dozens at a time. Large spiders dropping onto soldiers from overhead branches was a routine event that never stopped being terrifying. Some species were aggressive and would bite if disturbed. Their bites caused immediate pain and swelling. But the bigger danger came from infection. In the jungle, where nearly everything was contaminated, spider bites frequently became infected and required antibiotics or, in severe cases, evacuation. Spiders appearing in sleeping bags, uniforms, gear, and food containers was so common it barely merited mention in many accounts, but the constant presence of large, fast-moving spiders, some with leg spans of several inches, added yet another layer of stress and misery to jungle operations.
Now let's return to some creatures mentioned in earlier videos and go deeper into why they posed such serious dangers. As discussed before, bamboo vipers and several cobra species were constant threats, but the scale of the snake problem deserves emphasis. Military medical documents show that snake bites occurred almost daily across American units in Vietnam. Some units suffered multiple bites each week during certain periods. Philip Caputo's A Rumor of War includes vivid accounts of encounters with bamboo vipers. Harold Moore's We Were Soldiers Once and Young describes the medical struggle to treat snakebite victims during the Ia Drang Valley fighting. These incidents weren't unusual. They were routine medical emergencies that drained resources and put troops at additional risk. The constant mental strain of worrying about snakes wore soldiers down. Every step, every grip on a branch, every movement through brush carried the risk of a venomous strike. This hyper-alertness never ended. After months of checking every tree, every path, and every patch of grass, the mental fatigue became nearly as destructive as physical exhaustion. Leeches were mentioned earlier, but they deserve more attention. These parasites were everywhere in Vietnam's jungles, swamps, and streams. After passing through wet areas, soldiers often found themselves covered in them. While leeches weren't fatal, they created multiple issues. First, they could transmit diseases. Second, removing them incorrectly could leave the head embedded and lead to infection. Third, in Vietnam's filthy environment, even cleanly removed bites often became infected. But the psychological impact was severe. Having dozens of leeches attached to your skin, feeling them moving under your clothes, discovering them in places no one wants to think about, it created a constant sense of disgust and violation. Soldiers often felt as if the jungle itself was devouring them. Leech checks became mandatory breaks where troops examined each other and burned or salted away the parasites. Some soldiers developed serious infections, and a few even suffered severe anemia after long missions where they were covered in leeches for extended periods. Mosquitoes were far more than a nuisance. They were carriers of deadly diseases that killed or incapacitated thousands of Americans. Malaria, dengue fever, and Japanese encephalitis spread through mosquito bites and caused more casualties than some major combat operations. The malaria statistics alone are shocking. Over 80,000 confirmed cases among U.S. troops. The real number was almost certainly higher due to underreporting. A soldier could feel perfectly fine one day and be feverish, shaking, and incapacitated the next. Some died. Many were bedridden for weeks. Dengue, or breakbone fever, caused such intense pain that many soldiers were unable to move. There was no real prevention besides trying to avoid mosquitoes, which was nearly impossible in Vietnam's environment. No cure existed either. Medics could only treat symptoms and wait. Anti-malarial drugs had harsh side effects, leading some soldiers to stop taking them. For many, that decision proved deadly when they later contracted malaria. Choosing between debilitating medication side effects and the risk of a life-threatening illness was yet another impossible decision soldiers faced. Wildlife in Vietnam created a constant biological threat layered on top of every other danger. Viet Cong patrols could be avoided with skill and discipline. Some booby traps could be spotted in time, but wildlife was everywhere, unpredictable and completely indifferent to tactics or training. These were not symbolic dangers. They appear throughout casualty reports, medical logs, and after-action documents from the war. Tigers, crocodiles, venomous snakes, disease-carrying insects all added weight to the burden American troops carried. Understanding these threats helps explain why the Vietnam War was so psychologically draining. Soldiers rarely felt safe even inside supposedly secure perimeters. The jungle itself felt hostile. Every minute required vigilance against enemies ranging from tiny parasites to 400-pound predators. If you found this useful, please leave a like and share it. Subscribe for more reality-based Vietnam War content and check the description for sources. Everything discussed here comes from military records, veteran memoirs, and historical archives. Thank you for watching.